Some longtime viewers recently asked me to see if I could find a story about a haunted school. Well, in my research, I think I may have discovered the haunted school. It's definitely probably the haunted school of Appalachia. And if you guys know one more haunted than this, please send me that story or that suggestion because I got to hear about it. Because tonight I'm talking about the Mount St. Mary's College in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Now, it was built in 1808 and it's near Gettysburg. It's also near Washington, DC. So it's definitely got the geographical location and the age to have a haunted history. And it's definitely got the stories to match. In fact, it's got so many stories, I can't get to them all in the 10 minutes I'm allotted here. So I'm just going to give you guys the greatest hits. Now, probably the most notorious amongst students would be about a student. Now, this happened on a holiday break back in the 60s, and one of the students stayed behind on this holiday break and unfortunately passed. And since it was a holiday break, they were not discovered, for a few days until everyone got back to campus and the radio had been playing the entire time. The entire time. It had been playing the rock music of that era of the 60s. And in that dorm, in that hall, sometimes that music will be playing when there's no obvious source, no identifiable source. It'll just kind of be on the wind. You can hear the greatest hits of the 60s cranking out when there's no radio or anything playing. So another one involves a former president, a Father Brute, who passed on campus, and Brute Hall is where this happens, was named after him. But in particular, a room 252. Now, this room used to be assigned to the priest in seminary school there, and one of the priests experienced like his bed moving in the middle of the night. Also, there was a time when he had stepped out just for a couple of minutes. It was right after he had tidied up his room and organized his room. He stepped out for a couple of minutes only to come back and everything in the room was in disarray. I'm talking about clothes, books, papers. Everything was just strewn all about. And not only that, there would be like the TV would turn itself off and on. So the priest grew weary, his patience wore thin with it, and he moved out. Well, another priest moved in not long after, and he had a pet cat. And this pet cat had taken to staring at random spots in the room where there was nothing obvious there and just hissing and making a big commotion about some unseen force or unseen entity. So that priest moved out. And for a while, it sat empty. For a good while, actually. Well, eventually they did start assigning it to students back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the activity continued. One of the students experienced glasses flying off of this bookshelf, the bookshelf where that president had passed, and toilets flushing in the middle of the night by themselves, the TV turning itself off and on and flipping channels by itself. So evidently that president never left. Now, probably one of the more, at least the most heart-wrenching of the stories is going to be about a young soldier. He was a Confederate soldier. He was only 17 years old, but he had volunteered for South Carolina, and his sweetheart, begged him not to go, but he went anyway, and he was called to Gettysburg. Well, they had agreed on this certain star that they were supposed to both gaze at a certain time of night, and that way they would have, that connection that they knew that they would be looking at the same star at the same time of night. Well, he got called away to Gettysburg, and unfortunately, he was lost at Gettysburg. And it gets worse because some of the locals, since Gettysburg had such heavy losses and there were so many unclaimed, unidentified soldiers, they were conscripted by the government to give these unclaimed soldiers a temporary burial. And there was a whole proper procedure that they were supposed to follow. Well, an unscrupulous gentleman got a hold of this soldier and a couple more and did not give them that proper burial. He just took the money and threw them down in a dry well. And apparently, this young soldier was buried face down. He landed face down at the bottom and underneath the other two that had been thrown in there with him. Well, to this day, there are students on campus who will either see this young soldier appear to them, like he will tap them on the shoulder, and that's how they get their attention. When they turn around, they'll either see this young soldier, and all he says is, "Turn me over." Sometimes they don't even see the soldier at all. They just feel that tap on the shoulder and hear someone say, "Turn me over." But he just wants to see that star. He wants to share that stargaze with his sweetheart one more time. And one more that I can squeeze in the time I've got is about a former indentured servant there, we'll say. He was notorious for stealing or known for stealing, and after many times getting caught stealing, they finally he wound up losing a hand. Him and his hand were separated. That was common practice at the time, from what I understand. And it was buried in a separate location from he was because he eventually got his freedom and was buried in the cemetery on campus, but his hand was not buried where he was. Well, anyway, his hand is sometimes spotted. Not the servant himself, but just his hand. Think Fang from the Addams Family, only even creepier because it'll be tapping on the windows or scratching on the windows outside, or they've seen it like they'll look under their pillow and all of a sudden, whoop, there it is. So that's been the biggest or the top few of them. There's a lot more for Mount St. Mary, so you guys can look it up. But that's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions, y'all, and keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.